issues. Does anybody here have any of them that we didn't include on there that we want to at least look at and address?
Pedestrian crossing on 27.
Yes.
Pedestrian crossing on 27, enforcement.
Enforcement of it as far as jaywalking
Enforcement
or?
as far as the state law, to give right away to the pedestrians in the crosswalks.
I think that's more of a PD issue. I'll write
It's still a city issue.
I'll write it down, but I don't know if it's necessarily something construction can necessarily fix, but I'll write it down.
Well, construction impeded it when they decreased the width of the sidewalks, 2 feet on each side.
Or is the plan to put in diagonal parking downtown?
There is no plan at this point. What we're looking at doing is getting your input to find out what the issues are. From that, we'll take the highest number of issues, work with the MnDOT to come up with some options to determine what we're actually going to.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I came
Look
in
forward
late.
with
Did
it.
you discuss traffic patterns, traffic?
Nope. What we're looking at is those things right there. In terms of what you're seeing, we want to know what you're seeing in terms
So
of
you're
issues.
more concerned about downtown than the west side then?
Downtown, I would go over to probably Limber Drive or even 1 or 2 blocks to the west of that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But we wanted to include, quite a bit of people just because of,
So 27 is going to be redone.
they're looking at doing a mill and inlay on it, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so you're kind of talking about redoing the sewers and the water lines?
True.
What year, Greg, are you planning on, where do you plan on doing sewer and water?
Tentatively, right now, it's either 2019 or 2020.
MnDOT was out in front of my place 2 weeks ago.
Yep, those are the ADA improvements that they're looking at
But
doing.
there's 5 people there, and they're thinking that they would have done sidewalks in front of my business this year, there wouldn't have been so many sidewalks with the angle that it had.
That would have been next year, yeah.
Next year.
Yep.
And I said, well, that makes no sense. If you're gonna do utilities in 2018 or 2019, why would you put new concrete sidewalks in next year and then try to dig under them to put utilities in?
What MnDOT likes to do with their improvements, because any improvement that they do, whether it's preventative maintenance such as this with the mill and inlay, is they have to do the ADA upgrades. That's part of their requirements. And so they're getting ahead of the game in terms of, they're doing the west side this year, they wanted to do the east side next year, but they were seeing issues such as that you were seeing.
Too much slope, yeah.
Too much slope, and so they put that off to be included with the bigger project. I just found out about this project last year, probably around fall, and so that's where we started looking at, well, if MnDOT is going to be doing something, is it a chance for us to try to get in it as well? And so we've got to get those discussions started with MnDOT. Before I wanted to do that, I wanted to talk to the property owners and make sure I found out what exactly we're seeing so that everybody's on the same page.
Well, I asked MnDOT, I said, if you're gonna change their sidewalk up front, because that sidewalk's 5 years old, like Jack hammered it out, covered it himself. But anyway, I said, you're gonna change the sidewalk, are you gonna cut out the curb, put all new sidewalk right to the building? And he said, we weren't planning on changing the curb, we were just gonna change the slope of the sidewalk. I says, the building's here, the curb is here, how are you gonna make up that difference? He said, we might end up having a step. I said, not in front of my place, you need to have a step. Wintertime, ice, people falling over. I said, you guys better go take your clipboards and start refiguring, because we're gonna have a meeting on this.
Right.
I mean, there's gotta be some common sense to this. That's why we're here.
That's why we're here, yes, because I want to have that discussion with MnDOT so that we get a lot of those things addressed. So with that, are there any other issues? Yes.
If an additional railroad track is put across Highway 27, would that mean that a trestle would be also added so that the trains can pass and it doesn't get bottlenecked?
I don't know all the details on the BNSF project, but what I do know is, from what I've heard, they're not planning on adding another trestle at this point, just tracks.
And what purpose would that serve then?
I don't know.
They'd probably put a new line through there, because it's just a single now. Put a siding track.
True, but from what I understand, they're not looking at putting another bridge across the river for a second track. That's what I understand right now.
And is there a time frame for replacing the bridge on Broadway?
Tentatively, it's in MnDOT, it's not in MnDOT's short-range plans, which goes out 5 years. There's been talk about 2022, but right now it's just a placeholder. There's a lot of things that could change with that thing.
If it is replaced, what would they do?
I don't even know. I don't know. I think it's gonna depend on what happens on Broadway here.
Well, who's gonna determine that? Or is the city gonna determine that, or is,
That's where we wanna start that discussion on what we would like to see there.
but who has the control over it? Does MnDOT have the control, or the city?
MnDOT will do the design, but there has to be a memorandum of understanding for MnDOT to do work within the city. So we have some control, but ultimately MnDOT's going to own that.
Because at one time, the former engineer out of Brainerd, on his retirement, wanted to build a cement median down Highway 27, all the way through town.
Probably
Before his retirement.
Was that for the quiet zones?
No, it was for a monument in his retirement. And we squelched that, because I sat on a committee about 10, 15 years ago that went through this whole process of Highway 27 being a one-way, putting the opposite one-ways block or north or south, and there's no egress or regress. And we found out at the same time, 10 years previous, the same study was done and the same conclusion was done. So I think it's just a kind of a waste of time without studying those past reports.
True, but I mean, things could have changed from then to now in terms of what we're seeing in traffic patterns, where the businesses are. That's why we want to find out from you guys.
We have less
You're-
businesses. That's where the change is. There's less businesses, there's less parking on Broadway because the city hasn't marked the parking spots, and the cars park 4 or 6 feet away so you can't get an alternate car in there. If that was taken care of, at which time I asked the city engineer, and he said it would cost too much money to paint that 5 or 6 foot stripe marking off a parking spot. I counted the cars last week Wednesday when we had a meeting with the Downtown Association. At 8 o'clock, there were 8 cars between the bakery and the post office on both sides of the road. 9 o'clock, there were 12 cars. 10 o'clock, there were 14 cars. At 11:30, which is lunch hour, there were 11 cars. So parking is not a problem if the parking spots were marked off.
So you're saying that parking's not an issue, it's just that the marking of the parking is the issue.
And that's been that way for years.
Okay?
Greg, I think if you started on the first page and let people comment and go to the next page, you maybe make some headway. Because that parking, I agree. When you take a look at your picture here, like Pete says, if you had some striping, but also city PD's got to do their job. We've been here before, we've talked about it. When you get people that are living upstairs in apartments and leave their vehicles on the street all day, that loses parking to the businesses.
Sure.
That's common knowledge, it's been brought up many times. PD, when was the last time you seen the city police walk the streets or ever come in and talk to us businessmen and ask us, hey, how's it going in town? That hasn't happened since Kessler retired. City PD can take care of a lot of parking problems by actually seeing and talking to the business owners downtown and seeing what's going on. So I would say one of my suggestions is get PD involved and let them start talking to us business owners because we're there every day.
Sure.
Well, if you want to separate the parking, if you have problems that way, put the parking meters back in.
No.
Why
That will
not?
ruin business.
That will not ruin business no more than the man.
Why did they take them out down in St. Cloud?
They're putting them back in. Go down there.
But enforcement is a big issue for parking.
Okay.
Their parking lots are metered.
Anyone else have any issues that we want to put on this? We've got about 10 minutes left before we want to jump to the regular agenda items. Otherwise, what I think I'll do is I'll start posting them around there and ask you guys to vote on them, if you will, and show where the
If they
the
would
issues
do
are.
the underground work,
Mhm.
would that include the west side? or at least the first block,
Yes, it likely would.
is I'm having an extremely bad problem with water since I'm still hooked up to the old pipe
Yep,
and they ran the new one through,
Yep.
you know, many, many years ago.
right.
But now they're redirecting the water like on First Street and the avenues.
Correct.
And my water is getting worse and worse and worse, and they're changing the direction. I would like to get hooked to the new system instead of the old system.
Yep. It would likely include utility work on the west side as well. Both east and west side of the river have that old pipe. And with MnDOT coming through, it's an opportune time to take care of that because then we don't have to pay for the blacktop to restore the road. And realistically, they're probably not going to be doing any maintenance work again for 10, 15, maybe 20 years. I just don't see that pipe lasting that long again. So we would likely be looking at doing those utilities at that time.
And what is the larger scope of the project? Is it 27 throughout the county?
As far as MnDOT's, I don't have that answer. I just know they're coming through town is all I know.
Are we gonna try and regulate that so we're not putting in sidewalk one year and trying to dig up one year the next year?
In terms of,
Can the city say, hey, you know what, we don't want new sidewalk in 2016 and then try to put in new tar and utilities 2017?
true, yes.
I mean, what is the sense?
Right, yep. We are, and we're trying to work with MnDOT in regards to that, and they've already indicated that east side of the river, they're putting that off until this larger project.
Well, that ADA guidelines has gotta have some give in it too, because if you're looking at a major project like this, you're looking at a lot of changes for downtown.
The only give that ADA has in terms of for MnDOT is,
Timeframe?
nope, they have to do that at the same time as their bigger project.
Okay.
So the 27, if they're looking at doing a mill and inlay, it has to be done either before or with that project. You've got to give them some credit that they were trying to get ahead of the game and get it done beforehand. It's better off that they don't because then it matches in better with the larger project that we're looking at incorporating.
Well, I definitely want to be on record, I do not want Highway 27 in front of my business, so I'm
Fair enough, and I think it's too early to necessarily look at options. Once we get kind of the votes, if you will, then we can start looking at options, coordinate with MnDOT what they will they not allow, and then we'll have another meeting to present. This is kind of what we're looking at, and have more of a discussion at that point in time.
The other thing, when you talked about the knockouts
Yep,
or bump outs for pedestrian,
yep,
in Brainerd where they do that, they also, for snow removal, plow both sides to the middle,
true.
which would be a big advantage, I think, for 27.
I don't think you'd want to plow to the center on 27, just because then there's no left turns. Snow removal is going to be an issue.
The only time you won't have snow removal is in the short period of time that it takes to pick up the snow.
With Brainerd,
At
they...
least the people will be able to park without parking in the driving lane, and they will be able to get to the businesses when they park.
I hear you. I'll tell you my experience with driving through Brainerd. When they plow everything to the center, they do that the one day, and then it's either a day or two afterwards before they come back and pick all of that up. There's no left turns into an entrance, an alley or something that's mid-block, just because that's blocked off with snow. So they got to go down, make a U-turn, and come back around. It's more of a headache than I think it's worth. We can look at different
But
options.
it's impossible to pick up snow on them.
On what?
With the equipment that the city has, it would be impossible to pick up snow if there were bump outs. They can't go around corners.
They can't go around corners, you're right. And so we would have to look at some other options to get that snow removed. But I don't think I would go towards moving it to the center.
You're talking about those bump outs. Some bump outs, wouldn't they, if you're gonna snow plow over them, I can see what the plows and the payloaders, they're gonna be busting the hell out of that cement. I know they do that in the city lot next to our office. The curbing's all getting busted up from the payloaders coming through there. Not that I'm complaining, they keep the lot clean, but the
Right.
payloaders, they don't give too much, you know.
True. I know what they do in Brainerd is they pull it back with a skid loader and then load it up with smaller equipment. But we would have to look at what options would be available for snow removal if we go to the bump out scenario.
If you use the bump outs, then that fosters diagonal parking then.
Not necessarily. You can still have parallel parking with the bump outs.
Well, if you put in bump outs, you're gonna lose more parking.
You're going to lose more parking, there's no doubt.
And then I have to commend the city on snow removal. Many morning I've watched the crews out there working. They do an excellent job. I don't think you can find a better snow removal crew than what the city's got there.
Thank you. Well,
Good, I got here a little bit late, but if you haven't mentioned bicycle safety with the proximity of the car doors opening, that's one issue. And then since somebody brought it up here, what is the city's intention to do with all the downtown apartments and the lack of parking places for those tenants above there? That seems a solvable problem and should be dealt with.
they've dealt with it somewhat in terms of the time limit on the parking stalls. And there is a requirement in the city ordinance that there's off-street parking. Now, there are some apartments that are grandfathered in, so to speak, when they were in place before that ordinance came into effect. But any new ones would have to have the off-street parking.
But that's not available, is it?
Not, the city doesn't provide it, no. It would have to be by the property owner. If they chose to go to an apartment building, they would have to provide off-street parking. With that, Ben, can I have you help me for a little bit here?
I think I need more stickers. Seriously. Yeah, you gotta roll the stickers?
No, we are allowed to. Everybody make stickers. I know some people can't wait.
That must be non-exposition. No, the vacant position.
Like you said.
We have stickers where we just against it completely.
Duly noted. Did anybody else not get stickers? Here
President,
you go, sir.
You don't have stickers to vote.
I don't.
There you go. So if you wouldn't mind, everyone kind of stand up. We do have them listed around here. Put your stickers, one on each one of the two areas that you see as kind of the major areas that you're witnessing concerns in front of your property. And we'll take those, compile them, and then try to come up with some options with what we can do to improve it.
Is there any time frame on this?
There's not. I'd hate to even give you a guess on how long it would take. I've got to come up with some options, work with MnDOT, see what they would and would not allow, and then we'll come back again for another meeting.
For now, MnDOT's still talking sidewalks downtown, possibly next year.
Not next. I don't believe it's next year. From my understandings, they put that project on hold just because of the issues they were seeing.
All right.
Are you gonna set up another committee, study committee?
That's to be determined. We don't have anything in the works at this point in time. But we'll invite everybody, similar to what we did here tonight, to look at that stuff again.
I have a question for Frank. Frank, who's our downtown rep off the city council? Who takes care of downtown? What alderman or the board?
It's gonna be, Steve.
He's on the southeast, yeah.
Who is it?
Oh, Wayne too.
Leif Hansen's on the southeast. Wayne, he's alderman, is he not?
No.
Brad Hercock's alderman.
Yeah, Hercock's alderman.
You got,
So Wayne would be the northeast side. Leif would be the southeast side.
Boyum, southeast,
Who's mine? Who's mine on the
The
north
west side would be me and Frank.
yeah.
I think yours is Wayne.
I'm on the east side, by Bank Square.
Jerry Knopfler and Wayne Liljegren.
Okay. We probably need to have them guys come and see us in
That's a
person.
good idea.
Yeah.
Call Leif up, he enjoys that.
Yep.
He'll be right over there.
He probably
So will
should-
Wayne.
They should have probably been here tonight. This is a big project.
Well, we have to be careful of the open meeting law though.
Yeah.
So that's
But if you advertise, you're safe.
true.
We could advertise, so we'll keep you on your toes.
Fair enough.
After we put our stickers up, can we go?
Sure.
You can stay watch our meeting, but it's pretty boring.
I don't want any part of it.
Ron, I thought you liked me.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, maybe it's West Bar.
Thanks for your time.
What's the biggest concern tonight?
Guys have a good evening.
It's undecided at this point. You know, in terms of the utilities are old in that area, so we're likely to do something similar in terms of at least the utility construction. Whether or not we can or anything like that, obviously it's not.
Both sides of the
That's
wall.
a big issue because there's no businesses that
They're gonna be stacked up just waiting for us all day long.
There's a few,
Getting bad.
but not.
And it's kind of, yeah, it's totally gonna be.
I don't think the bus will.
Until they build, and when
In
they build
terms
a
of
second.
BNSF for us.
Ronnie Nordberg and I work for DN. We know how they operate.
We'll wait for you.
Yeah, the guy who owns the train. Guy's making billions off the train. How much clout do you think Warren's got? Why would I want to build a Makes a lot of business. And the tracks, and the coal. And it's
Right now, there's really not a lot of discussion.
I love the coal fields, because they own the coal fields, they own the coal, they own the trains, and they own the
Area
railroad
there
tracks.
is gotta look at some sort of.
They're making money 4 different ways out there. Every load they go through.
That's one of the issues we've got.
Kind of like Standard Oil when they own Chrysler.
So that may be something to look at.
They have the turbine cars.
Turbine cars, yeah.
Come out.
Never did.
Supposed to get
Are you
about
missing some
47
documents
miles
there?
per gallon for their big
planning
Chrysler
commission?
materials.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
their Standard Oil bond. Yeah, Standard
Quick
Oil.
one, I'll find out where it's at.
Yeah, that should be there.
Never made.
I understand you're
Gee, go figure.
Plans are still sitting in the vault somewhere.
I can handle that. Sounds good. See me.
The sidewalks this way, and rip off next year, we can- some comments.
Thank you, everyone.
I think it's great that we're getting this far ahead of it, because, there again, DOT, there's a limit on what we can do. You know, if they don't like it, they're gonna say no.
They have their laws, they have to.
They have their laws that it's still a highway. And at the end of the day, it isn't the city street, it's 27.
We choke that up so much.
Is that the public record?
Yeah, getting a one-way.
Yeah, or bypass.
Or,
Go back 30 years. This one, we got 371, we put the town to bypass. I was on when we got first avenue back. Yeah, first avenue.
First Street.
Well, First Street, we got that back. And there was a DOT guy here at that time. And he said, their expectation is that 27 will eventually carry as much traffic as 10 did at the time we were getting it back. So, yeah, 27 is going to carry a lot of traffic over time.
well, it's starting to get hard to even come out on 27. cars
I
coming
never
in. Okay, that all said and done. Let's move on for request, public hearing for request for a conditional use permit to allow for an existing business to add liquid storage tanks with flammable materials in an I-2 heavy industrial zoning district. Who's gonna take that one on, Ben?
Mr. Chair, before we start, I'm gonna recuse myself due to conflict of interest on both of these,
Okay,
since we do a forum.
sounds good.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first application we have tonight is, like I said, a conditional use permit for an existing business, CM Automation, Central McGowan, to add liquid storage tanks with flammable materials. They're in the I-2 industrial district. And the reason for this is because the ordinance lists any liquid storage, particularly of this nature, to be a conditional use in that district. So when we look through the ordinance, typically the obvious concerns are, if any of that's going to be flammable or potential explosion issues, to just make sure that proper precautions are taken and those kinds of things. And whether it fits in with the surrounding use, if it's in unusual danger. So that would be the primary issue that I would see with this. As I noted in the staff report, there are a number of other things you can talk about that might be secondary issues to that, or related issues, truck traffic associated with it, or noise, if any screening would be necessary, things like that. You don't have to find any of those things, but if you determine that those are important and necessary, then you can require those conditions. So, this pull up a map here of where this is. In the North Bluff addition, it's kind of the general area right there. And then the specific platted area, you can see obviously most of those lots, as you know, are not developed right now. There are a few. There is a daycare business to the east, immediately to the east of the proposed lot, which this would be, where some of the tanks would be stored, others would be on the existing property. There's a couple other buildings in the area. Yeah, Atomic Learning is the building up here. So that's the basics of it. Got answer questions?
The I-2 boundary is outlined in red.
No, that's not necessarily the, I can pull up a separate map here for you, but that is not the zone district.
I-2 goes all the way up to Roach, basically the old Route 71 bypass.
But the area that's in question is there's the I-2 district.
Yeah, so these are the two lots here, three lots, 3, 4, and 5. And that whole area is on I-2, as well as across the road. Nearest residential is some distance away across.
If it's zoned heavy industrial, why do they need a conditional use permit for this? Because of the quantity?
Not because of the quantity, it's just this liquid storage is a conditional use.
Oh, okay.
I would imagine the main concern with liquid storage is not obviously things like water, but things that are flammable. The potential of either a pollution hazard or an explosion hazard or safety issues.
But those issues, fire hazard and other PCA issues fall under the auspices of other organizations as well, right?
There are other regulations, as I understand it, that would apply. You got the state fire marshal that would have some things that could apply. PCA with storage and anything that could be. They all have standards that would have to be met. If it's a state standard, they're going to have to meet it for a state requirement. So that's not really the primary topic for us.
When they go through and do their building permit, likely this will go to the Department of Labor and Industry, which will then trigger those reviews as well.
At this time, is there anyone in the public who would like to ask questions or? If you do, come up to the podium, state your name.
And there's some questions. I'm Joe Francis, an owner and CFO of Century Allen. Here to propose putting 2 500-gallon propane tanks at our facility. We have them currently at our old facility, which is right off Haven Road, towards the highway 10 interchange there. Realistically, they're basically like a gas station, like you see at Zarn's right off the road. It's just for filling propane and having propane filling capabilities at our site. So really clean, 2 tanks, nothing more than that. So I can answer questions if he has them.
Anyone have any questions? Yes.
Okay.
Anyone else?
I have one quick question. I gotta walk up here, huh?
Well, I could have brought a mic, I suppose.
I just have a question about safety. There's a daycare facility close by. And are there going to be any odors or other the nuisance factors that are listed in this, under L, in this document? Thank you.
Anyone else?
You want me to answer?
Sure.
Okay. Typically no odors with the gas, especially in high concentration. The room that gets filled in is actually non-walled. You can't have walls on it for explosion reasons and that type of thing, but it's again no different than a typical propane filling like you see at Zarn's, which is a half a mile down the road. So the odors get transferred out into the general air, and I think we're probably 500 or 1,000 feet from the daycares. And we'll keep the tanks in as close of proximity to the building as we can, so.
Anyone else? Hearing no one else, I close this public hearing at 6:42. We'll be open to discussion amongst the board here.
Mr. Chairman, I move for the approval of the conditional use permit as requested.
I'll second.
Motion made by Ray, second by Keith. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Now it's time for a discussion.
I suppose we should have a discussion. Not much discussion,
Pretty much laid out, there was a concern about daycare. Is there any thing in play how close a daycare can be to tanks of that size if there was a major explosion?
Not in the city code.
Nothing in the city code, but that might be a state code issue.
Could be possibly. My understanding, it's the daycare where we didn't receive any written statement from them for, I can't confirm that, that's my understanding. I mean, they were certainly notified, and then just give them notices.
Propane's heavier than air, so it kind of hangs down, doesn't it? Okay. That's why it has to be open, so it can't be in a contained area, like a building where it could explode.
Yeah, I'd probably use, I can speak, I'd probably use the term a little too much, but it's, as long as propane can escape into the air, it's in the atmosphere and it's then gone, so there should be no concentration of propane by any means. And they're clean, brand new, maintained
tanks have to be checked regularly?
They do, yeah. We have a professional Federated co-op who comes and actually fills them for us.
And they can't be rusty on the exterior because,
Right. Yeah. And they put brand new ones in. I think we've already actually talked to them about the move, and we're leaving our current propane tanks, and they're gonna be dropping 2 brand new painted tanks for us.
as far as safety, you know, from the daycare, I teach school at Holdingford. We had a lot bigger propane tanks sitting outside, not too far from the playground and not too far from the baseball fields and not too far from my art room.
Yeah.
And there was no code violations there.
And it's, I mean, picture it as you have an extra tank at your house. I mean, it's just like the propane tanks that sit outside of the home. So the hazard with it is if they let it by a home where you live, I would think it's pretty minimal. To anybody. And we did talk to the daycare and explained all these things, and they were more than willing to work with us. So.
I mean, they put the daycare in the industrial.
I was wondering that
There's a
myself.
home there if you want.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of seems kind of interesting that put the daycare in the middle of an industrial.
Oh, even atomic learning.
So,
Yeah.
I think they took
jobs.
I think they built the building.
What's that?
That area is job care.
Okay.
I don't think they built that as a daycare. I
Yeah,
think
it was something
It was
repurposed.
something else that
Okay.
was repurposed.
Just interesting combination there.
You could move in there.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Any more questions, comments?
No?
Hearing,
We already passed
we should have had the
that.
discussion.
Should have the discussion before the vote.
Yeah.
We can vote again if you want.
Well, usually there's a motion and a second,
And
then we
then
discuss,
discuss it, yeah.
and then, okay.
Would you like to vote on it
I don't think so. I think everything we're hearing is, it meets pretty much all the expectations the city has and the state. If there's anything else in play, the state's gonna come in, and that could be one of stipulations that, and the state's gonna override anything we do anyway, so I think it's fair to say that this is a recommendation we're gonna give to the city
I was
council.
gonna say, make sure you let them know that we recommend to the city council for final. Okay.
Yeah, this is, our vote is just a recommendation. The city council can vote yea or nay, you know, if they see anything different, but basically, that'll go before them at the next meeting, right?
Yep.
So if you want to come to that, just to see what happens, I would recommend it.
Okay.
There has been times, city council didn't go with the planning commission, so.
Well, we've been closely working with Lori too, and the city administrator, and we've been trying to plan all this out, so we'll be there for that too, and hopefully all goes
Okay.
well.
Sounds good. And then it's that. We have another one. Request to consider the vacation of a drainage and utility easement in the North Bluff. I called this public meeting at 6:48 to begin. And again, I put that in Ben's hands.
I will actually turn it over to you guys. There is an existing drainage and utility easement on the west side of Lot 5. It straddles the lot line between that and Lot 3 and 4, as you can see up on the screen. 20 feet is on the west side of those lots, as you can see, and there's 15 feet on the east side. Tonight, we're looking at vacating that portion of it. The Central McGowan, or CM Automation LLC, is in the process or has purchased Lot 5 from the city. There is an easement in that agreement in terms of the sale of that lot for a 35-foot easement, as you see in green. So that easement is in place. So tonight we're looking at vacating the stuff that you see in red up here, so that they can continue with their project.
Anyone have any questions or anything to say on that matter?
You need to get a mic.
That might be a good idea.
What's the reason for the vacation? That's one thing. And does that mean that the city takes possession of that drainage ditch?
The vacation reverts it back to private owners unless there's utilities in place. So if a telephone or gas is in through that area, then they would continue to be able to be in that area. But once you vacate an easement or a road, it goes back to the adjoining property. In this case, it would be the CM automation. The easement on the east side that's shown in green on the board, that's in place, but the drainage ditch would need to be constructed yet. And so that would be one of the conditions that I would request the board put on it, is that they construct that easement in the green in order to vacate the one on the west side that's shown in red.
Is that easement entirely on lot number 5 then as well?
The new one?
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
And that is entirely owned by the landowner?
That is correct, yes.
One on the west side looks like it's part of blocks 3 and 4.
Yes. It's
So,
part of lot 3 and 4 as well as part of lot 5.
and who owns 3 and 4?
CM Automation.
Okay.
That's why on your
So you
application,
can
you'll see CM Automation / the City of Little Falls. At the time, the City of Little Falls owned lot 5, CM Automation owned 3 and 4. They recently purchased number 5. I don't know if it's closed yet, but they got the purchase agreement and the approval of the council to purchase that lot. That's why we've got both names on the
And this
on the
is,
application.
this is just a utility drainage easement, has
Drainage
nothing
utility.
to do with like a alley or anything like that?
Correct.
Okay.
Just a drainage and utility.
Any other questions or statements?
Okay. So, yeah, tying on to the propane, so now we saw that propane was maybe gonna lie closer to the lot line of lot 5, which if we have another picture of that, yeah, now you can barely see it. So, if you look, you got lot 5 that kind of runs like this, and then lot 3, 4 line is right here. So we're constructing about 4,000 square feet onto the building outwards from our current building, and then we're proposing to put, a truck bay, a loading dock bay on the backside here. It technically doesn't go over the lot line yet, but it would go over the easement. So it's not going to go way into lot 5. We just need to buy lot 5 for future growth, future expansion, and future power business. So then you can kind of see maybe the propane tanks lining up in this vicinity as close as we can possibly get to our building for setbacks from the city and that type of thing. And then basically this drainage ditch runs the whole length. So in order for us to do what we could do with the building, we would have to move that drainage ditch to the other side of the property. So we're still going to lose about 35 feet on our call it east side of the property, but it's going to work and fit for us well enough.
Lot 6 is Atomic Learning.
No,
Daycare.
Daycare.
Lot 6 is the
The
daycare.
gate there, yeah, Atomic Learning is above that.
Okay.
Yep.
Any questions for me?
No, I think we understand what you're doing there.
Okay.
No more questions? At this time, I close the public hearing at 6:53.
I make a motion to vacate this drainage with the stipulation that they improve, that they do the other 35-foot drainage on the east side of the lot.
Okay,
Construct a ditch.
Constructed it, thank you, yes.
Second.
motion made by Keith, second by Ray.
Now discuss.
Any discussion at this point? I think that was one of the discussions that, I'm glad you put that into your motion.
Okay, yeah, because basically we're just moving it from one side of the lot to the
Moving it
other.
And this isn't gonna have any cost on any of the properties that border them if you did have to run utilities through or something. Now, if they run that drainage on the east side, how's that gonna affect Atomic Learning or any of the other business?
It shouldn't, the drainage goes from 22nd Avenue to the south. There's a wooded area that has some lowlands in it. That eventually drains along MnDOT's Trunk Highway 10 area, and then it gets out to the west side, goes along 76, and ultimately to the river. So they're moving it over, I don't know the width of the lot, but 100 feet basically 2 feet to the east side of that lot.
So that ditch doesn't continue south right now?
Correct. It just goes into
Okay.
a small wetland area, and then it discharges as it gets high enough to discharge out, and it'll continue to do that.
So it's not gonna have a domino effect?
No,
Okay.
it won't have any adverse effects on
Okay.
anything there.
Any other? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Again, that will go before the council. It's a recommendation from us. And it would be nice for you to show up just to see what happens.
For sure.
Okay. Okay. That's it for our public hearings, right? Looks like the next one we were gonna have has been moved. Recessed, so we're gonna leave that one alone. We're into the old business. Discussion about storage POD regulations.
Mr. Chair, if I may, it may be worth discussing the date in terms of when we're looking at recessing that
Okay.
item. Just so that we can get that one taken care of, as well as kind of get it in stone, so to speak, when we're looking at recessing that too.
Well,
Some of the dates that Ben and I were looking at were the 22nd and 23rd, excuse me, 24th and 25th rather, of June is what we were looking at, but everything, I guess, is open for discussion right now.
instead of having it at our next meeting, have a special meeting?
Well, it would be a recess meeting, so it wouldn't be a
It'd be a
special, it would be a
recess
recess
meeting,
meeting.
okay.
I'm sorry, what day are you looking at?
24th and 25th?
24th or
Of June?
25th? Yes.
Okay.
So
It's
basically,
gonna start 18.
2 weeks from now.
Is that enough time for you to do all your notices and,
Yes.
okay?
Yeah. We couldn't do it necessarily before the 24th, that'd be the soonest we'd be able to get it, so.
I don't see anything from my part, maybe either one of them.
24th, 25th, 26th, I'm gonna be gone. So,
Was everyone else standing here?
On the 24th,
that's Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, yeah.
Could we have it earlier too, like 6 o'clock versus 6:30 or?
I can meet with at 6.
Instead of whatever time, 6:30, like.
What's the best time for you to meet for? You like 6:30?
He's gotta go first.
Hey, Wednesday, I'm sorry.
You don't want to
If
go on the
need, if
29th?
you need to
that following
have it
Monday?
earlier, I can get around that.
It doesn't give us a whole lot of time in terms of getting it to the council, but we can do that.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Have it on Monday, the 29th,
Okay.
on regular meeting night.
Mr. President, may I ask a question?
Yes.
You're discussing something that's on the agenda, but there's nothing on that table for the public information about this.
Because we have
It's
the
a
public
It's
information.
a recess meeting. We're looking for a date to have a recessed meeting.
It's a recess meeting with an application here. The application is supposed to be on that table for the public view.
We were notified that the applicant is looking at getting that in, so we have it on here, but we have to get the formal application in terms of getting all of that in place in order to get this on the agenda, or get the meeting right there. So, it's coming in,
There's gonna be public notice.
but, right, we've got to get a public notice.
There'll be plenty of time for a public notice for the meeting, for the recessed meeting, and
Correct.
so it's all public and everything?
Correct. You have to notice it 10 days ahead. And that doesn't change because of the recess meeting. It still applies, and we're still have time to meet there. Right.
Okay,
So I have a question as to whether or not you can even discuss this when you're talking about a public information that should be on that table and you're discussing when to
No, we
schedule
discuss when we're
this.
gonna schedule our next meeting.
Discussing
That's
what
what
we're
we're
gonna have.
discussing. We're not discussing nothing that's on your deal. We're discussing when we're gonna recess our meeting to. Set a meeting date. We're not
That's all we're
discussing
doing.
anything, no applications, no nothing.
we're not
It-
even bringing up any of this right now, we're not gonna discuss it, we're discussing when we can have a meeting
To discuss it.
to discuss it.
But it says a reapplication for conditional use permit. I believe that there should be an application on that table.
So when we schedule a meeting,
Would the 29th work better for,
He can work for me. Works for me.
On the 29th, okay?
then are we gonna have a regular meeting a week after that?
No, it'll be
2 weeks after that, okay.
so when we adjourn tonight, we just adjourn to recess the meeting.
So like 13th would be all right.
6:30 on the 29th then?
6:30, you want?
6:30.
It's-
I wouldn't mind moving it up myself.
I would like it earlier if possible,
All right,
even 5:30.
I could do that too.
okay.
Works for me.
Put it on big bold letters so
Yeah,
those of us that don't look at it.
we'll jump on it.
5:30?
5:30. Discussion on files.
Yeah, what I see here is, this is gonna be a recess meeting, it needs to be scheduled. If you don't get everything into the papers and notified and everything, we cannot have that meeting, there'd be no purpose to it. So, make sure that's all in place and everything is out to the general public the way it's supposed to be. And, we're just taking a meeting that was gonna happen tonight because things didn't quite develop right, we're recessing it, but it will have to be developed for that day.
That's true.
Okay,
So June 29th at 5:30?
5:30.
Okay.
May I ask another question, President, Mr. President?
Does it pertain to this?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Am I to understand that the reapplication for conditional use permit to allow for a planned unit development to include the construction of 8 single-story fourplex residential buildings for rental purposes on an approximate 8.8 acre parcel, applicant Roach Development LLC, has not occurred yet?
No.
No, it hasn't.
Verbally, they've indicated that they plan to have very similar application with the same wording and stuff in there. So that's where we're looking at this year.
Even if an application came in for something in the past, it was voted down, they can apply for a reapplication and try to get it later. Doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna happen, it just means we have to listen to it.
And one other question, when was this meeting recessed from? What was that date?
Today was on the agenda for today, but because there wasn't
Ample notification.
ample notification, we couldn't have it.
Oh, I see.
We're not gonna have it. So it's just being recessed to a different time, so they can get everything in place, so we can do it properly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on from that, old business. Now we can discuss storage POD regulations.
Okay.
That's gonna be Ben, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And so we talked about this a couple of meetings ago, I believe it was, and I presented kind of a draft potential ordinance based on some other ones that I had seen. You'd asked that we look into some more examples from other places. I did some of that. The ones I was seeing, really the two options were either they just completely banned them, or they allow them for some temporary period of time. So I didn't print any new ones out because I didn't know that was necessary. But you know, if you completely ban them, obviously that's a pretty simple ordinance. If you allow them in limited circumstances, then it becomes a question of how long will they have to stay there. And in that sort of vein of thought, there's kind of two options from there. It's either you set a date, the number of days that they're limited to, 60 days, 30 days, 90 days, whatever it is, or you limit it to something like during the active construction. And you could say until the active construction is done, or until 10 days after the active construction is completed, something like that. I haven't seen anybody any communities, and we could do more research if you want, but I haven't seen anybody that allows them for much longer than 90 days at the most. Unless you have active construction going on for once it's 90 days, then most
I think one thing you said, simplest way is to ban them.
that'd be
If
the
you put
simplest.
something in place, it should be simple also. Where they could put them, not on the street. They're too heavy, they'll push down the asphalt, you're just asking for troubles there. But I think more it's the purpose. It has to be for a construction purpose where somebody is, you have to move everything somewhere until construction takes place, and maybe give them a 90-day period or something, or else they'll have to find other places, like renting a site off somewhere else or something. But I think having them is probably a benefit, because there's a lot of people who use something like that when they are going from one place to another. I think we don't have to make it real tough on the public. So 90 days is the max as far as I'm concerned.
Could you draft up an ordinance, a 90-day provision?
Yeah, we have this one here that I drafted the last time we talked about it. If that's the only change you want, is to just specify the number of days. This one actually does have a 90-day period. You can see in this section here, it says you can get a permit for an initial 90-day period that can be just amended. In this draft, it says the zoning administrator can issue that. And if they want to extend that, it has to go to the city council, and then they have to approve it up to another 90 days. You can say 60 days for the initial period, or 30 days, and then they can extend it up to another.
Does the council really want to bother with storage extensions?
I don't think so, but it wouldn't take very long to make a decision on something like that.
Pass a draft ordinance here and dump it in your lap. It sounds like, I don't know if you'd want to bother with extensions.
The thing is, if you have a construction of a new building going up, is it going to take more than 90 days to construct, a Walmart, where they can have storage containers that work for more than 90 days while they do construction? But a guy could have provision for construction while permit is valid. Does it talk about, as far as construction, the storage?
I don't see anything about off-street.
I didn't see it. No off-street.
Yeah, we could specify that. I mean, we can go through this. It's pretty short draft here. We can go through it line by line, so everybody understands
Okay.
what we want.
Hold still. Okay.
Getting dizzy.
So, yeah, sorry. In terms of definitions of a portable storage unit, it's ones that are towed, hauled, attached to a vehicle, taken from one site to another. They don't have a permanent foundation. They can include semi-trailers and similar type structures that have been modified. If they're constructed on skids or they're fish houses, those sort of more common things, those are not considered portable storage units. That's kind of the starting point for how we define that. You can have these, and they would be exempt from any permitting if they were contained entirely within the building or screened to an equivalent manner. If they're located 100 feet or more from the public road right of way, or an occupied or unoccupied dwelling, the next will be exempt. If they're actively being unloaded and will be located for less than 96 hours, those are exempt. So if somebody pulled one on and from day one, they wouldn't be required to get a permit, they do have kind of a grace period there. It's just for a short period.
So for example, if I was loading my furniture in one, and I loaded it in 2 days and got it out of there, I'd be all set. Okay.
Basically, have 4 days.
Yeah, that'd be 4 days, yes.
And then if they're for rent, or somebody's got a business of renting these or selling these, and you've got one on that lot, then they're obviously exempt. And then semi-trailers that are licensed and road ready will be exempt as well.
I don't like the screening part because someone could put that in there and put a nice screen around it, it becomes a permanent building. So I wouldn't put that as an exemption.
You would leave the one in there if it's in a building, but not
If it's in a building, it's
Yeah.
fine, but I could see
I would take out the screen.
screen one.
Okay. So then, in terms of getting a permit for these kind of structures, within that 96 hours for a grace period, they would need to obtain a permit. It can be obtained from the city. We have an application form, payment of some kind of a fee that we would have to establish. Those kinds of things. So, the application has to include their name, where it's going to be, when it's going to be delivered, when it's going to be expected to be over there, those kinds of things. And this is where we get a little bit more specific. Once it's granted, it's valid for a period of time not to exceed the 90 days, and then it can have it extended for another 90 days. So as the zoning administrator, I could issue that permit for the first 90 days. And after that, if they wanted it longer, we would have to put it on city council.
Could that be 90 days where you make that decision too, if it warrants an extra 90 days or not? Because it's like Ray was saying, it's kind of like city council micromanaging something,
Yeah, I mean, I think the main question at that point becomes a question of, do you want to have the public have an opportunity to neighbors, basically?
Okay.
Or, anybody in the public, but probably primarily the neighbors, have a chance
So
to
you-
give this is getting too long, or it's just fine, or whatever. So, you wouldn't have necessarily, you wouldn't have to have the planning, or the city council do it, you could theoretically have the planning commission. But the question's gonna be, do you make some kind of notice to the neighborhood?
Do you have a public hearing after 90 days, or do you?
So it still goes to the council, right? So we don't have any authority.
I guess we'll leave it as is written.
Mr. Chair, I had a question too, back on the containers. I was thinking with these storage containers, look how many of these roll-off dumpsters you have sitting in yards for months on end that are half full of garbage floating around. Could we
Some of
encompass
them were on the
those,
street for a long time
could we
too.
encompass those into this too, or?
Or check into having an ordinance just for them.
And you
Can
could
be
maybe put
worse
it in
before we
there.
get the business.
Whether we put it in here or put it separate.
Right.
Yeah,
Probably be better if we separate, because that's another set of,
it's a whole different ballgame.
Do we really want to do that?
yeah.
I guess, where Lincoln School, there's one that's been there for, taking it down more, 4 months, and it's one piece at a time, and it's all over the neighborhood, because the wind comes up and it blows, and
I've seen them on the street where they did have an impact on the asphalt, pushed it down. Then that becomes our cost.
But are we doing this for the exception as opposed to the rule?
Yeah.
If 90 people in a year, get a dumpster, roll-off dumpster, and they're out of there,
2
in a
weeks,
month,
yeah.
are we legislating for just one exception as opposed to what the general rule of thumb is?
yeah, but nobody would be on the streets, if somebody's doing a roofing job, dump them on the street, throw it away. That's something that should be,
Yeah, but there again, like you said, most of those are a week and then they're gone.
it should still be off public right away.
Plus they leave a lot of nails on that street. so I would prefer they weren't there.
Yeah. But I think
Just
that's,
as far as, we're talking about storage containers, you see, that's another, basically, one open side is the only difference.
At a different time, I suppose, it's something we can look at. It isn't part of this, so. Maybe we can bring it up at the next meeting, put it on.
You think that would
For the
be
issue of-
garbage and junk in the end,
Sorry, you typed for the issue of
roll-offs.
Roll-offs, bring that up at the next meeting. That's a whole complete different thing. One is for storage of things they're gonna save, and the other one is for trash and debris.
You're talking your regular July meeting.
Yeah.
Or the next one, or whatever. If we do some research, we might have some of our other ordinances already that address it, just need to be enforced maybe.
Any other questions regarding storage POD regulations?
Did we ever get to having it not on the asphalt then, or not having it on?
This doesn't specify that, so we could add something like that in there. They have to be stored on the right away.
I think so.
Yeah, I would put one in there.
Like, does that even require all of them? It's like a semi-trailer and wheel?
I think they should all be on.
No, they're exempted from this rule
Yeah,
anyway.
if they're licensed.
If they're licensed.
already, then they can be on the road right away. But if they're not, then they're storage units, and they would have to be on premise. And we can review the code. I mean, there might be something in there already that would sort of do this, but it might not be bad to clarify it here either way. So we can clarify that.
So we find 90 days, or you want to go 120, or was it?
There again, I would think 90 days would cover the majority of the people.
90 days on a standard permit, they come in and pull a standard, if they wanted something longer than that, they have to come in and apply for it through the council.
Yeah.
So if it's construction, if it's a Walmart project coming in, or, something like that, where they're gonna be there for a year for construction, they can come in and,
Yeah. I mean, you could have sort of an automatic extension, subject to zoning administrator review, if there is certain conditions met, like active construction is still going on.
That's what I mentioned a little earlier, and if we could just go through that.
I guess I would want to know roughly what the criteria are for extending it. Is it going to be automatic, or do they have to meet some kind of rough condition anyways?
Sometimes contractors are just slow, or.
I think if there's active construction going on, that's certainly clear. That's
Yeah.
a reason. If it's just because, we just want it longer because they're trying to sell their house and it's taking longer to sell than they expected. Whatever like that, so.
I think I would definitely say active construction would allow them to extend that 90 days. Okay.
You'll have that for the next, not our recess meeting, the following, okay.
Next regular meeting.
So if there's active construction going on, the zoning administrator can extend like the conditional 90 day period another 90 days.
That's what I would say.
Yeah.
After that 90 days, there could be another extension.
Then that might have to be something to bring before this group, or probably this group, and then it can be referred to the city council if it has to be.
just go up, there's gonna be a,
Yeah.
the council's gonna be aware of it. Why bring it here and then wait on a week to go to the
I
other.
think,
other one.
well, it's like why we're here to begin with, is the council expects us to look at things and get a kind of nitty-gritty on the whole thing, and then
Make recommendations.
shorten it a little bit, so when they get it, they don't have to hash it through for 2 hours, That's why we
building
get
official
paid big
too.
bucks
Big
here.
recommendation from the building official. Yeah.
So that way, if it came before us, we could decide if it
It's
warrants,
worthy, yeah.
or we could say this one we just don't recommend,
Mhm.
and why.
Yep.
Sounds good. Put it together, we'll look at it next time.
Do you want a public hearing at the July meeting, or do you want to review it first?
You better review it first.
I think we should review it.
We should have, I think we should have the meeting down before then.
This is what finished product.
Before, yeah, you all understand this, before we can have it adopted, it has to be.
We'd like to have our attorney look at everything too.
You can say
That's all said and done. I don't see anything else. Is there anything you want to bring up, Greg, or? Okay, I entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Make a
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting to a recess meeting of June 29th at 5:30.
5:30.
I'll second.
Motion made by Jeremy, second by Keith. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We're recessed.